Hello, hello. Welcome back.
Hey,
Another
guys.
episode of Agency Exposed. Brad, Ken.
Welcome.
How are you guys?
You guys always have look. I have like the granny.
Yeah, I know. You literally walk out of your kitchen with a mug
I do.
into your car,
I do.
and you bring it right here.
Isn't
that's-
that cold?
I
like
respect that.
I like cold. Well, do you like iced coffee?
Not like that.
It's not ice. It's warmer than air.
I mean, I respect that because it's just badass. Like you're not scared of spilling it
Yeah.
while you're driving. You drive your little sports car and you're flying around turns.
You're
and
envious, aren't you?
yeah.
I know. If for those who are listening and you can't see this on YouTube, by the way, follow our YouTube channel. It's looks like a no disrespect to grannies, but it does look like a granny cup.
It's not a very masculine cup. Yeah, that's the
Yeah,
only
I'm okay
problem.
with that. I'm okay with my masculinity.
I used to have a friend who was kind of like that, and he would go into these coffee shops around town, and I'm not going to name them because they probably have this poster on the wall, but he'd get a coffee, and get it in not a to-go cup because it's like nice experience, and the real mug and that kind of thing. And like halfway through, he'd be like, "Let's walk," and he'd just leave and take it, and then he'd bring it back days like next time he's there. But he's kind of like you. He's just like,
Well, you should see my back seat. I've got like 10 of these. No, I don't.
I had a boss back in back in the day, and he had his own personal mug in the office. And this guy was like old school. When I said old school, he's old school. He's from like Boston, but he was living in Florida at the time where I was living. And he had his own mug. And have you ever known these guys? Like they don't clean out the bottom. They like it to build
stained.
up. They like it to build up.
Yeah.
And it was so gross, but he would drink it every day. And then one day, like 6 months into this, one of the assistants that was there, she thought she was going to do a favor and clean it out for him.
Oh no.
He went ballistic.
That's
he's like, "Don't touch my stuff. Why did you clean this?"
It's like an iron skillet. You got to let it like marinate, right?
really?
Yeah.
I never forgot that.
I missed that segment.
Well,
I guess that's a thing, right? Like just
Yeah.
letting it
I didn't
build
know
up
that.
or something.
I didn't know that.
I don't know.
I clean mine every day.
Mine's pretty clean.
I mean, when you're drinking Bulletproof all the time, like it gets oily and stuff, so you gotta clean it.
Yeah.
Speaking
All right.
of bulletproof,
Yeah.
it's a good segue into today's topic.
Figured.
We've been talking a lot about the future. We've been talking about stuff that's happening in agency life, and we've been around long enough to have gone through 2008 as either agency owners working in agencies. Interesting time. The only recession that I've known, official recession, but it's a bull market right now. And I know, Brad, you talk a lot about this.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of, theories out there. We might continue to grow and be stable. Things might change. Who knows? But I think it's important to talk a little bit about how do we prepare. And we've talked about financial preparation in the past. You can go back and listen to some previous episodes. But in the context of what's going on in the world, the evolution of crypto, we talk a little bit about investing here and there. How do we prepare our agencies for just what might change if something were to change drastically tomorrow?
Yeah. During a bull market, you never know where the top is. And I think that's where we're teetering on right now. And that's what I'm always a little bit hesitant because I felt I have a few scars from 2008. And, if you weren't in business during that time, the first thing that gets cut during the recession, especially one that drops fairly quickly like we did in 2008, is that marketing budgets get cut and everybody puts spending on hold. And it wasn't like what happened during COVID where everybody took a break and didn't know what to do for the last, for 2 months. Everybody kind of put things on hold. But then by May, things were starting to spend again because we thought, okay, we're over this. This is like a frog in a skillet, right? The whole adage where it just kind of slowly happens. It happens slow enough that you kind of watch it fall. And then all of a sudden things start to go. And it's not just because out of fear, but really out of the bottom line is being hit by companies. And so they're making financial decisions because their bottom line is showing it. With COVID, the bottom line wasn't immediately showing it. They're just out of fear that they stop spending. So it's a different type of feeling than what we just experienced, I think, in the last year. So, if we are heading that way, which...
why are we in a bull market right now? Do you know?
Why?
Yeah.
Well,
You can explain it to, I mean, everyone has opinions. I was going to say explain it to listeners, but like as if you know exactly why. But let's break that down because we shouldn't be.
Well, yeah, it's funny that you watch, during COVID and the stock market's at all-time high.
Right.
So, what the stock market does
knows this.
is a lag. It's not a leading indicator. So, typically the stock market is short term, and it's based on key metrics that we haven't seen hit yet. Will we see that? We don't know. I know the head of the Federal Reserve, Powell, basically said, "Hey, this 1.9 million shouldn't increase inflation." But how do you print 1.9 million? In fact, now it's almost 2.9 million because there's a $2 million.
Aren't you talking about trillion?
Sorry, I'm in billions. I'm not even thinking straight. It's trillions.
Right.
So literally within the last year, we've printed more money than since almost 1980. You can look it up. Go to the internet and look up the M1 money chart of printing money. I know it's crazy. I'm a nerd.
Go to the internet.
I'm a nerd. But so how do you not have inflation? Either that or you have high taxes. Like, how do you not have inflation?
Well, he didn't say that won't happen.
They didn't say that would happen. So the question is, right, is that can the stimulus, can it actually, it puts money in the economy. So it will, in the short term, it could stimulate the economy. And we could see higher growth and this bull market continue. The question is, will it actually impact us?
I was at the mall this weekend with my wife picking up a few things. And the one mall that we go to, it's never crowded. Never. I've lived here for 20 plus years and never seen it crowded. It was packed. I'm like, what is going on? And I think people got their stimulus checks.
Yeah.
And, some families got, $5,000-$6,000 they didn't have.
Yep.
I definitely think in the short term, it's stimulating the economy.
Yeah.
I mean, I see it all around me. I just, it goes from no one out to all of a sudden everybody's out.
Yeah. And that's the challenge is does the stimulus package really in the long term help families, or is it just a very short term Band-Aid?
I mean,
and so
I don't know if this is well known. My assumption has always been the stimulus has been to, I mean, the economy works by cash moving, right? When cash stays still, that's when things stop, right? And we all need cash to move. We need things to be purchased so that things be paid for. We can get paid.
People can have
it's
jobs.
A cycle.
Taxes.
Yeah. And so I always assumed, I don't know if it was like widespread, but I mean, the stimulus is not really about giving people savings. It's about giving people money to spend. It's kind of like, when you go into, a casino or something like that. Not like I really do that, but I don't know. Sometimes maybe I'm completely wrong here, but I've been in places where they're like, here's $100, go spend $100.
Right.
And then that kind of like gets things going.
That's why it's called a stimulus. It's not called a let's save people from.
Yeah. But I don't know if this is just because there is another plan on the table for an actual economic stimulus package. I don't believe that this was specifically economics. It was people who are out of work.
No, I'm not. I agree.
So it's really more of a Band-Aid for people.
I think that's necessary. That's clearly
for
necessary.
Those who need it. And let's just face it, there are for those people that really do need it. And there's other people that, they're out shopping, like you said, with it.
Right.
They're just stimulating, and they're stimulating the economy. However, they're stimulating the economy at the same time we're devaluing the dollar. So how much can the Feds print? Because in 1971, we got off the gold standard. And so every country now that's westernized countries uses fiat. So they just literally add new zeros to the balance, in the spreadsheets, and boom, all of a sudden now that's, they call it quantum easing, but this new thing is not quantum easing. It's really, it's really printing a ton of money. So what does that mean? Does that mean that we're going to have inflation? Does that mean that the economy will continue, that the NASDAQ will see the all-time high? It could. I'm not saying it will. It's kind of an experiment because we've never printed so much money in the history since we've been in the fiat dollar. And so what does that mean? Does that mean another recession? Could it mean the opposite? I don't know. I'm not an economist. I'm just a layman person who kind of watches all this stuff and kind of analyzes it. And then, but I do know that I went through 2008 and there was a recession. Now that was based on obviously the housing market and some nefarious things that were going on, but I'm not saying there's nefarious things going on right now. I'm just saying that that could happen and it will happen. It's a cycle, right? So how do you prepare for the downturn when it happens? That's what I want. And whether it's now, whether it's 3 years, whether it's 5 years down the road, 10 years, it's going to happen. Let's just face it. So how do you prepare your business when that happens? Let's unpack that a little bit.
Yeah. And I mean, like you said, the frog analogy where you turn the temperature up a little bit, right? And that's how you cook frog. Supposedly, I never cooked one.
Had one last night. It was delicious.
Really, yeah. But that's how it happens, right?
Yeah.
It happens slowly over
Yeah.
time. It doesn't always happen like 2008. It doesn't always happen like the way it did last year. And last year it rebounded so fast that it almost, at least from an economic standpoint, didn't happen the way everyone expected it, right? But it's possible that everything that's been happening over the last 12 months will create a gradual decline. And we might just start feeling it as an economy across the board in different ways. And in the agency world, I think that you need to be wise enough to see that and plan for it.
Yeah. And the thing that I'm always challenged with is that the central banks, including the US, they manipulate the money. Just face it. That's a good thing because they've done quantum easing for years and that's helped inflation and it's kept our dollar strong. But that's the question is that the central banks manipulate the money and we just have to sit around and not know whether the dollar is going to be able to buy me one Big Mac or two Big Macs. You know what I mean? We don't know.
That's how I judge the dollar.
Exactly. So the question is that how, again, how do we hedge? How do we protect ourselves? And I like to explain a little bit about, like for me, what happened in 2008.
Yeah.
Then I think
Love to hear that.
Yeah. So I was living out in LA and it's before I started Anthem Republic out there.
When did you start Anthem Republic?
2010.
Okay.
So right after the Great Recession. And I was doing contract work, and I had a lot of contract work.
And you just worked in a bigger agency, is that right?
No, at that point I was living in LA, and I was contracting.
Okay.
So
Your own independent.
yeah, when I was in Detroit is where I worked for most of the agencies. So 2008 came, and all of my contract work, and I had probably 5 to 6 different clients at the time that I was contracting for. It was before I really started my business and growing it from there. Everything kind of just people started paying later, right? So you start seeing these indicators of like, boy, we're not getting paid on time. It seemed hard. People were starting to hoard their money, and it happens. That's the first thing that happens is you start to protect your bottom line. You start paying those who are the squeaky wheels, and the ones that are not squeaking, you kind of let go a little bit and you delay payment. And all those things started happening to the point where, I got to the point where there was quite a few months of income that I was expecting that didn't come in. And, I had a little bit of a buffer, but I didn't have enough to the point where there was a couple of months I'm like, I hope I get work, and when you're feeling like I hope I get work, that's kind of a scary thing when you have a family and you have, some bills to pay.
You're living in LA.
And living in LA, it's very expensive. And so for me, we've talked about the Enneagram and personality types. And so I'm an Enneagram 5. And so my worst fears are there's not going to be enough time and not going to be enough money. And I deal with those things all the time. They're not healthy, but they do drive me a little bit in some positive ways it's kind of like, it's like the yin and the yang kind of deal. Like there's some benefits, but there's also, as long as I know that and I know how to manage that within my own stress level. But I can tell you that after 2008, 2009, I told myself in my head, I'm not going back there again. I could have prepared. I didn't prepare properly, but I could have. I had every opportunity years before to prepare for that financially.
What ways would you say that you could have like when you were in that state?
Yeah, I would say have a year's worth of income.
So you spent more than you should have, you think, or you didn't invest it right, or
Well, I made some
you didn't
changes.
save it?
Yeah, like I moved out to LA. Things were a lot more expensive. We had, I had to, during that time, like a lot of people, I had to dip into retirement. I had to dip into some of my Roth IRAs and take out money, and I pay the penalty for it, things like that. So, I just wasn't prepared enough. I didn't think about it. I didn't think that there could be a downturn. For some reason, I don't know why. I was kind of like, everything's moving great and we're all doing great. And so, I'm not trying to be a
it was pretty sudden, just like it was last year, if I remember, in 2008 too.
Yeah, it was fairly
There was nothing
sudden.
leading up to it. It wasn't.
No, not a huge amount of indicators. But the main indicator that I would look at is I would start looking at some of the larger indicators. So for instance, interest rates. As soon as they start raising interest rates, what's going to happen with the housing market? Right now it's hot. Like every market, I talk to people in Detroit, they're like, man, there's so much, people are looking to buy homes. There's not enough inventory. Interest rates were down below 3. I mean, that's unheard of. When interest rates start to creep up to about 4, then the housing market's going to slow down. And when the housing markets slow down, that's a nice key indicator. Another indicator is the new car sales. Those are good indicators. Things like that, big purchases. So when the big purchases start to slow down, that's the time when you got to just look at it and go, okay, let me just kind of make sure that I can weather this a little bit. It doesn't mean that we're going into a recession by any means, but it does. Those are some leading indicators that I would look at.
That's good.
Yeah. What about you guys?
Well, I mean, 2008, I intentionally kept my agency lean for the most part, but it was tight. The industries that I was focusing on was mostly entertainment, which wasn't affected as bad. So was able to weather that storm and tighten up, maybe not use as many contractors. I don't think I had to let anyone go internally necessarily. I can't even remember. But it was tight. And I remember during that time thinking the same thing as you, like, I've got to make some changes here.
Yeah.
And so in thinking through that as we go forward, and other agency listeners might be listening, and Ken, I don't know, were you independent at that time or
I was
contractor as well?
Yes.
You're probably, were you one of the ones that Bob cut?
No, we were working together.
Sorry.
In fact, I moved down here in 2007, and I've always been in business for myself and wasn't doing that kind of work, and then decided in 2008 to start doing some of that kind of work. And when we kind of worked together, and honestly, and I don't know why this is, but things got better. Like things were easier. For me, I don't know if it was the shift in spending or, how businesses were spending that money, or, and a lot of the technology and internet stuff was like sort of just like, I would say gaining momentum. It was still kind of new, internet marketing, all that kind of stuff that was still kind of new and progressing fast at that point. I don't think people understood it very well. And I found that there was a lot of opportunity. And I actually would say, as we got into 2012, and I did a lot with VCs and startups and those kind of things in the Valley, still do. But at that time, that started booming as well. And so for me, I was very busy. The crazy thing is, you look back, and I remember the day when I think it was Merrill Lynch and all the big brokerages kind of like crumbled, and it was like, whoa, is this? I can't believe this is happening, right? And I thought things were going to get really difficult. I was buying a house. I got my loan the last day that they were doing loans. They stopped doing, like, I think it was Bank of America stopped doing loans completely for a period of time.
Yeah.
And I thought it was going to fall through and everything. And I got that the last day. And so I was definitely concerned because all this stuff was happening. And me and my wife had just moved down here, just bought a house. And it was like, okay, what's going to happen here? But thankfully, it just seemed like it was the opposite effect in my experience. It seemed to be more opportunity. There seemed to be more investment. I was part of a couple startups through that period of time that were funded. And I would say it seemingly started to tighten up as we got, past 2012 and that kind of thing. So I almost had the
Exact
opposite.
And I think that the lesson there is that.
But why is that?
Yeah,
There's a question to unpack. Yeah.
If you're positioned right, and I think, we can just go down a whole rabbit trail, which we won't, but I think if you're positioned right, there's opportunities like we talked about benefiting those businesses that pivoted and benefited from COVID and revolutionized who they are. Obviously, a lot suffered as well. But I think the lesson that you just shared is that you can benefit in these times too, and you can prosper if you're prepared and if, what we're going to talk about today, because everyone else is going to be scrambling. Other agencies are going to be cutting back. But that doesn't mean that there's not businesses, startups, corporations that still need us, that we're still going to push forward and are still going to spend money. You're going to be there if you do things right to really benefit from it.
I don't think I was intentionally doing this then,
Right.
but I do think now the ability, we've talked about this before, to look ahead into what's coming. So all this stuff that you're talking about, Brad, I think it's really important that any leader and especially business owner is kind of a student of these financial indicators and financial markets, even if it's not something you like, because they're leading indicators of what's happening. And I think you have to be thinking about what is my next bit, like what is my business becoming, and even in your life. I think just in general, people you lead your life like you would similarly to a business, and I think that's a good thing. But that is, we've said this many times, but those times are when the opportunities arise. Like you can actually take really giant strides if you're intentional about planning,
Right.
if you're holding things loosely and nimble enough to pivot. When things get pulled back, that's when, if you're ready, you actually can take, you have a lot of opportunity.
Yeah.
I think you can have the opposite effect.
What I would say too is that the only way you can pivot is to have capitalization in your company. You have
Right.
to be able to capitalize these pivots, because pivots do take money. They are not just the mindset, which is true. It is mindset too, but it's also that. So this isn't financial advice, by the way. So
Yeah, and consult your financial planner.
Yeah, that's my. This is.
but we're
this
going to
is
give
layman.
some that works for us.
Yeah.
maybe.
So what I would say, and you'll hear this, is if you don't have a line of credit with your bank, get it now, because you can't get line of credits when the financial markets crash or if there is a recession. It's hard to get money then. It's easy to get it now, and you're going to get probably a decent rate. Make sure there's make sure if it's a variable rate that there's a ceiling so that it can't go over a certain percentage in case the interest rates do go beyond that.
Now, obviously, some people would be against leveraging debt, and we have Dave Ramsey in town, and so if he's, I feel him frowning on this conversation. No, but seriously, how do you use?
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, unpack that.
Don't use it. Just have it there, because you
I think
can't
that's
as
the
a
secret.
parachute. Yeah,
That's the
exactly.
secret.
Don't use your line of credit unless
Money
you
is cheap
absolutely
now.
have to. Correct.
Loans are cheap now.
But if you need capital, you won't be able to get it when there's a recession. That's the problem. So you'll talk to anybody. They'll say, get a line of credit. If you don't have it, get it now while the go. Well, you got to get it when there's a good economy, not when there's a bad economy.
And when your P&L looks good.
Correct, because that's when you're going to get it. So do it now. Don't use it though. Just let it sit there. You won't pay on it. You won't pay any money. It's just sitting there available to you.
The goal here is you're stockpiling
Correct.
all the resources that you need.
You need options when
that's
there's a
wise,
recession. You need A, B, and C options. And so this may be a C option for you. It may not be an A.
Right.
In fact, I wouldn't suggest that it's an A because it's debt, but I'm not a big fan of debt. But the other thing is, how long can your business run if we do go into something? Can it survive 1 month? Can it survive 2 months? Can it survive 12 months? I would say that if you can, try to have a 12 months worth of capital to run your business. Now, here's the problem that arises. If it's cash just laying on your books, you don't want cash laying on your books. Your cash laying on your books is being valued every single day because cash is going is the value of cash is going down. The U.S. dollar does not gain, and there's inflation.
It's kind
actually,
of like owning, buying a big car.
yeah. I heard some financial
depreciates.
advisor that was like, oh, if you can just get 2% on your money, that's great. That's low risk. I'm like, wait, inflation's 2.5 to 3%. Even my ninth grade knows that. It's like you're losing money by holding the U.S. dollar every time you hold it. So what do you do with it then, so that you can make or at least keep all of your money in a low risk? There are ways to do
That's
that.
accessible.
That's accessible. I would talk to a financial advisor about that, because if you're just holding cash and there's a ton of cash in your bank, I would make it liquidable though, so that you could get access to it quickly within a week if you needed to. So
Even better than cash. So the 12-month thing is a really good rule. And then you can even break it down further, because I would say there's 3 months, which is like probably cash in your bank account, right? Because there's swings and those kind of things. And then I would say there's another 9 months that is at least accessible within that 3-month period, right? And so there are things that are accessible within 3 days, but there's like ally bank accounts, or you can go a step further and put them into the market and some of that kind of stuff. But you want low risk,
yeah, be careful about
as liquid as possible.
putting it into the market, because the market's going to get hit when the economy gets hit. So you want to put it in things that are hedged, whether that's, and then again, this is not financial advice. You have to talk to but it could be gold, it could be Bitcoin, which is deflationary. There's other things too that are interesting right now that's going on. For instance, if you read the news yesterday, Visa just did a partnership they're going to be using USDC, which is actually a cryptocurrency. It's tagged to the US dollar. But the thing is, there's something called staking. Look it up, staking cryptocurrency. And right now you can stake the USDC, which is basically just stays at $1. It follows the United States dollar. You can stake it for 20%. So and it's called staking, and you're basically getting 20% on all the money that you put there and hold, and you can sell it and get it back quickly and get all of that, and start using that as USD. So there's other ways that
Starting to talk over my head.
Yeah, I know it's really technical. Go just Google it.
So have a year's worth of business.
I'm going to have
Capital.
a steak tonight.
Yeah, stake it. STAKE.
So a year's worth of business capital. What else?
Yeah, and I think the point there is that it's accessible.
Yeah, that's right. You need it accessible. You need to be able to
And
not just let it sit in dollars.
earning
But
something.
before we move on from that, let's unpack what that means and how to get there. A lot of people listening might be like, how on earth am I going to get a year's worth? Like I'm barely paying my payroll and getting a small percentage of profit every year. What are some real practical ways to get to a year's worth of savings capital?
I don't know. That's challenging.
I've got a simple brute force one.
Okay.
And I stole this concept from someone else, but it's this idea of profit first. Mm-hmm. So you can even do this in a personal way, which I do. It's kind of a Tony Robbins thing. He calls it a wealth tax. But it's this idea that your business and you're going to use. And this holds true surprisingly well, but it'll use whatever budget you give it. And so if you give it everything, it'll use everything. Like it won't leave anything left over. And if you give it 20% less than everything, then it'll use 20. It might be hard, but you'll have to figure out in 20% less. My suggestion is you give yourself a wealth tax, or let's call it profit tax, but make sure that you're profitable. So, I would say you want to be shooting for 30% net profit. That would be a good number, because I know agencies are typically lower than that in net profit. But when you look at other business sectors, 30% is really where you want to be at. Brad, I don't know if you have a different opinion, but you shoot for that. And I would say, if you're really not, then you start giving your business 20 to 30% less than what you bring in to run. You start putting that away.
It can take 5 to 10 years to build up a year's worth
it should take a long time, but I think I think the point that I'm trying to make is it never just happens with leftovers.
Yes.
Like you have to, and I think
you have to be ultra
true in life.
Ultra intentional about it.
You got to take it out first.
Yeah.
Because if the government raised your taxes, you'd have to figure it out, right? And so just raise your own taxes. That's kind of like use that same mindset. If the government doubled your taxes, which they probably going to try, you'd have to figure it out.
Yeah.
So just do that to yourself and start putting that away.
I'm not saying you have to have a
my
year's
tactic.
worth of income, but certainly if you can't survive with 6 months of a downturn, that could be.
Well, look, you're not going to be. I mean, my goal has always been a year, but the truth is, you're not going to go for a year with zero income.
Correct.
Right? You're going to be offsetting that. And honestly, if you're going that long, it's time to rethink the model.
Yeah.
Right. And so, of course, you're never going to run that runway out. But the idea is it's safety. It gives you confidence because it's safety.
Or you need a line of credit. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you know what I mean? When you're going to borrow at, 5%. I mean, that's easy too. So whatever your model is, I'm not saying that's the right model for you. That's not my model, just so you know. I don't have a year's worth of business. And again, I don't think you'll need it. But I do have a line of credit, and I've had it for years, and I got it during the good times, not the bad times, because you can't get it during the bad times.
Yeah, it's hard to get during the bad times. I think the point is, though, when you have financial, I think it's not all about money, but it is all about money. Yet at the same time, right? So like everything needs that to function, and so if you can create financial stability, I think that gives you a lot of confidence, and then it also gives you a lot of power to act when you need to act. And I think that for a business exists to make money. So I would say, we all say, like, that is probably one of the number one. Is that the number one thing? I would say it's the number one thing is create yourself financial stability. And that will let you will operate better. It will have side effects that are so much more important than even just planning. Because, for instance, like, if you have a client that's kind of just not working out anymore, you don't have to decide to stay in that relationship just for the money.
That's right.
And so it allows you to make more objective decisions, more healthy decisions. A lot flows from that financial stability.
I would say that it depends on the size of your business and company. If you're a larger company, then obviously, if you have partners, you have to be on the same page with your partners, and you have to, bring in some consultation, financial consultation as well. You should always do that. If you are a sole owner of your company, you may not keep your money in your company. You may personally be able to put money back on the balance sheet, but have a place that you can get financing, whether it's even if it's a life insurance policy that has cash value, if it has that you could take a loan from, like, find ways that if you do need capital during the time that you can get, money at 5%. That's still pretty good money. Then another question is during those times that are down, because you're going to want to have a lot of allegiance to freelancers, to contractors, to employees. Like, you're gonna, and when it is such a slower thing that happens, you start to feel the pinch, but you're like, I think we're gonna get over this. And then it kind of continues to get worse and worse. And so where do you draw the line where you have to actually make hard decisions in business? When you're in a bull market, sometimes the hard decisions are not as hard, but when you're starting to go into a little bit of recession, then you have to make really tough personal decisions that, you've worked with a contractor for the last 10 years. They've been awesome. They're part of your team. And then you've got to say, sorry, I know that you don't have an income coming in, or I'm 50% of your income, and I'm going to have to let you go for the time being, and knowing that you're going to struggle and your family's going to struggle. What do you do there in those times, And those are hard times.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think there's an easy way around that. And if you're looking for one, I don't know that it exists.
Yeah, no.
I mean, it's just it's part of business, and
it is hard to find good people. So I think that I've always been the mind of trying, if this is someone that is really critical to I had a friend once, and he was going through a hard time, musician back in 2010, and had done really well, and then the music industry flipped, and it still kind of struggles a lot in some ways for some people. And he was selling everything, and it came down to him. He was just filling me in. He's like, I'm selling my last guitar, and I'm thinking, your economic engine is creating music. If you sell that thing, that tool that allows you to do that, then you're kind of you have nothing left. Like you can't create, you can't leverage that to do business. So I think when you're looking at pulling back team, I think you have to consider the same things. Like you can't pull back to the point where you can't deliver any product, you can't deliver any services.
Yeah.
And then you actually don't end up, then it's a downward spiral where you go out of business, right? Too.
And I always remember, I'm going to remember this till the day I die. So back during the recession, all of the big three automakers went to the government to ask for a bailout, but there was one that didn't. It was Ford.
Mm-hmm.
Ford didn't need the money. You know why? Because they capitalized themselves. They got lucky really, because they capitalized themselves only very shortly before the quick downturn. General Motors and Chrysler though needed bailout from the government. You remember that?
Yeah.
You don't want to be like General Motors. You want to be like Ford. You want to be capitalized enough. You want to prepare for it. Now, Ford didn't have the cash. They just borrowed it early and they had it. They had availability to it. So I always take that as a rule. What if that was in my own life? What do I do? Another thing to look at too is, are you in an industry that if there was a downturn would get hit the hardest? And how do you diversify maybe? How do you think about diversifying your clientele, especially when there's on the horizon, there could be a downturn, right? Do you start looking at different industries that are healthier? For instance, we really got lucky during COVID. Half of our clients are in the healthcare space and health tech. Well, that kind of boomed during COVID. Like, you know what I mean? So we didn't see the effects on some of the clients like other clients, which really helped us during that time. So, and we just got lucky, to be honest with you. If you're in the music industry, like you're talking about, we got friends in the music industry. We all do. They've had a hard year, and it's not over with yet.
Yeah.
They're still not performing, touring, and going out and about. I talked to a tour manager for a fairly large band. I went skiing with him with a bunch of guys, and he was one part of it. And he's like, I don't think we're going to be touring until like the summer, late summer.
If
maybe.
that, yeah, I know it is an interesting thing, and it's sad for those industries. And you're right, like if you're in trade shows and those kind of things, like that went out of nowhere. Who would have thought that trade shows would shut down?
Yeah,
I think I've said this before, but like we have to put aside our assumption that things are going to be around, and just I think it's really healthy in any business and even in your life, but especially in business, to say, okay, well let's run a scenario. It's like a fire drill where what if this didn't exist? Like I do that now. I'm like, what if somehow e-commerce didn't, because we're in e-commerce primarily. What if that got taken away? What if, like, what would you do? And running those scenarios, I think is a healthy exercise.
You have to. Nobody wants to do this because this is like a downer conversation. I know it is.
It doesn't have to be though. Because
I know, but
but I think that like if you're in a strong position and and you're not in a difficult time yet, it can actually be empowering because you can say, okay, now what are opportunities? Like, okay, we're not taking advantage of this thing. We're all focused over here, and what if that got taken away? Oh wow, we realize that there's another opportunity over here.
Yeah.
I think it can be kind of positioned.
Yeah,
as
the difference between doing it in the middle of a bad time and doing it in the middle of a good time is when you do it in the middle of a good time, it's strategic, healthy, and it helps your company to evolve and get stronger. When you do it in the middle of a bad time, it's almost too late, and you're scurrying, right? Yeah. So what you're talking about, Ken, is really a healthy exercise we should always be doing. And we've talked about this on past episodes of, what if Facebook ads went away tomorrow? What if Google ads went away tomorrow? What if Shopify went bankrupt and turned off all of their support? There's scenarios that we say, oh, that would never happen. But all of us at this table have seen it happen over and over.
And I think if there's one thing that 2020 has taught the entire population is that anything can happen. Right. We would have never thought a year before, like, trade shows will never go away. Right. Well, it did.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
I know it's.
I've got another thing that you should do is get your receivables in order. And I would say, digital payments for sure. But if you're not doing that, I mean, I think that is the most vulnerable. You mentioned it.
Brute force digital
earlier.
Payments.
Yeah. I mean, now is the perfect time to do that because, it's physically more difficult to accept checks and those kind of things. I think if you're a business out there that doesn't do, digital payment, I think you should be, or a service agency that does doesn't do it, I think you should be doing it. But you mentioned when you're talking about your 2008 story, that was one of the first indicators and one of the first things to go were the unpaid invoices. So,
or another thing you could do, for your business, these are just, again, this isn't financial advice, but instead of renting a building and paying a lot of rent, maybe you could think about buying during this high time and low interest rates. Have your company buy a building, and then that way, if there was a recession, you're not having that rent to pay on top. You know what I mean? There's ways that you could create income from your value, or maybe it's maybe your company owns a rental home and there's income coming in from that. And during a recession, more people rent, and so it's kind of a little bit recession proof in some ways. So
yeah, one of the things that we did in when I was running my agency is we bought a building down the street actually from here, and on top of it was 2 apartments. And so having that income that we rented to people who lived on top of it, so the bottom was zoned retail or commercial, the top was zoned residential. So they'd turned the previous owners had turned the attic into a little efficiency, and then underneath was a 2-bedroom apartment, and then underneath was our office.
Yeah.
So that was nice to have that put toward the mortgage every month, and not have to worry about that extra, however much it was.
Right, and that would probably net out to less than rent, I'm guessing, right?
Yeah.
After you take that out of your mortgage payment,
yeah.
At least in your case.
Yeah, exactly. And now I know the people that we sold that building to, they rent those out on Airbnb and make a lot more money than I ever did.
Damn it.
Yeah. But I mean, you're right. It's opportunities like that when things are good to say, what's my biggest cost center right now that I'm throwing money down a hole and I'm not getting anything back out of it? How can I turn that into some sort of investment vehicle?
I think for agencies, I think something that we all need to hear is to be as lean as you can. I don't mean that in not paying people what they're worth, but I think agencies typically are they're the type of companies that they put on a show and a lot of money is spent in places that probably doesn't really produce results. And I think this idea of staying lean, it doesn't mean you have to look scrappy. But to be as scrappy as you can, I think that gives you this ability, because you want to create this gap between what you're able to make in income and what you're able to spend to actually do a really great job, of course, but what you're able to spend, and cutting expenses or keeping expenses that are just, not really worth it, or a lot of times come because of ego.
Right.
I think those type of things, you can pull back, and, obviously you don't want to, the flip side is, for me, those things don't really like float my boat, but for some people, they live their life and you want to experience some of those things. So you don't want to live in an unhappy life that, you never get to enjoy the fruits of your labors. But at the same time, I think, when you can be really lean, you're able to be nimble. And when those things happen, you may not be the one that's cut, because you're able to create a lot more value than the competitor that maybe is the one that's getting cut.
Yeah, definitely. It's it's a tough topic to talk about, especially when things are going well. This is my own personal view. I would like to hear about your personal views too, going around, because my personality is already bent this way. But my personality is right now, what I see is, again, this is not financial advice, and this is probably not going to happen, but my lens is I see us another 6 months to a year closing on the top. And then I think there's going to be a little bit of changes going on. I think there's going to be inflation. I can't imagine if the Feds print another $4 trillion of cash that we're not going to feel that somehow. Things are going to become more expensive. You're going to go to Chick-fil-A and instead of spending, $30 for your family, it'd be $45 or whatever. So it's just the dollar becomes less valuable. That's what I see on the horizon. I don't know, there's a lot of indicators that I could get nerdy about to say why, but That's what I see. It doesn't mean we're going to have a hard recession. I just think that it's just our dollar's just not going to go as far. What about you guys? What do you guys see from what?
I wish I could predict effectively, because I would have said this bubble would have burst, 6 months ago or more. What concerns me, honestly, is the real estate market, because that's you can always tie that, like, it's continuing to inflate, and it can't continue. Like, a balloon's going to pop at some point, right? There's no way that home prices, the rate at people buying homes, there's no way that can continue. It's just it can't, because there's not enough inventory, right? Yeah. And so when you have a place like where we live, and Detroit and others, who are starting now to compete with home prices in places like California and others, since I've been here in Franklin, Tennessee in 20 years, the prices of homes have almost tripled, tripled in 20 years.
But income hasn't tripled.
No.
In fact, I used to pay, if you look at income value 20 years ago, I would hire people that I pay maybe only 10% more now.
Mm-hmm.
But like you said, some houses have tripled.
Yeah.
So
a $200,000 home
it's because
could get you something really nice. Now it's $600,000.
Do you know why that is? It's because interest rates are no longer at 7%.
Right.
They're at 3%.
Right.
So you can buy a heck of a lot more home if you mortgage.
But my point is that house is not really worth $600.
Correct.
Meaning, I know that worth is all in what someone will pay for something. But in a real world, it's probably 20% less than that, 25% less than that, right? And so when we start to see that start to shake and quake, that's when I'm going to start thinking about business stuff, because I think it's just a trickle down from there. And I think we saw that in 2008 for sure.
Right, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, it happened for the next several years, and it got to a floor. And hey, I know a lot of people that own a lot of real estate because they were
absolutely
ready. They were ready at that point.
And I will say this, now's the time, like you said, because when that happens, that's when you start buying real estate.
Yes,
yeah,
exactly.
It will.
Right.
It will.
When do you buy real estate?
Warren Buffett.
When it goes on sale.
You want to be prepared to buy when things are down. And the only way to prepare for that is to stockpile when things are good and not spend it all.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of self-discipline to do that.
Yes, it does.
And it also takes a lot of discipline to not get the FOMO effect, because I feel like even right now, I know a lot of people that have just gotten into investing because there's this kind of FOMO thing happening. But maybe that's right, and maybe it's not. Who knows? But don't, I think when things are good, I think you can be pulled into getting involved when maybe you shouldn't. Maybe you should sit out and wait for it to kind of come down again.
A relative of mine in my family, very wise financially, when during the recession, when the big three went up to beg for money, and Ford really didn't need it. This person had some, is in the auto industry and knew kind of what was going to happen. And as soon, everything was tanking, the stocks were going down. And as soon as Ford didn't need the money, and they said, they told Congress that they didn't need the money, this person went all in on Ford stock, and literally, boom, it popped back and paid for their whole house with their gains, literally paid off all their house and everything. So, but he was poised and had the capital at that point to do that. It wasn't like he was during that time, freaking out. So being prepared like that allows you to take advantage of a few things, during the time. So whether or not, most people say that's the buying season, right? When things are hit hard.
So get a year's worth of operating capital if you can, or at least start working toward it. Now's the time to get a line of credit if you don't, and just
stay lean.
Focus on wealth tax.
AR.
Take a percentage and put it away.
Yeah, I mean those are all financial areas, but yes,
and don't keep it in all cash, but don't put it in the stock market or high, because things are going to get hit during the recession too. Put in things that can hedge.
Yeah, sorry to cut you off. I was just going to say, I think from a business functional perspective, I think continuing to innovate or being aware and testing and those kind of things.
Anticipate what would happen if.
Right.
Be thinking about those things now.
Yeah.
It's good. All right, guys. Good info. Maybe we'll unpack this further next episode or talk about something more positive. Who knows?
Let's talk about high times.
It's good. Talk to you, talk to you later, guys.
Bye.
Bye.